Welcome. If you're watching this, welcome to my series on emotions. And I hope that this will shine some light and maybe even be insightful, maybe shift some perspectives around how you view your emotions and then how you're able to manage them, process them, shift them, and allow them to move more fluidly through you. So let's get started. The first thing that I want to share about emotions is from the context that I'd like to share. The methodology that I coach and use is that no emotion is inherently good or bad. And this is counterintuitive because this is what we've often been taught. We've been taught that certain emotions are good or positive, like love, happiness, joy. Those are good, they're acceptable. And then other emotions are bad, they're negative, they're not acceptable. And those emotions might be fear or sadness or depression or loneliness. And this is very misguiding at best and harmful at worst. And the reason being is that when we perceive certain things to be bad, or especially our emotions, when we perceive our emotions to be bad or negative, we tend to avoid them, or we suppress or repress. We distract, we numb, we do all sorts of things. And often our attempts to not be with or to avoid or to push down those emotions can cause other issues. So, and one of them is those emotions just kind of get stuck. They don't really go anywhere. They manifest somehow in our body as tension or chronic pain. And, as we move up the extreme of that scale, they can manifest as chronic disease and illness. They can also show up as depression and mood disorders or mental health issues. And so it's really important not necessarily to over-identify with our emotions, but to be able to be with our emotions in a bit of a different way, in a healthier relationship, perhaps, so that they can move and shift and flow, and so that we don't get stuck with them. And so the invite here is that we kind of, or you try to drop the judgment of making your emotions good or bad. And what I like to share with my clients is that emotions carry a frequency, and I work with an emotional scale, and I've seen many. There's one in particular that I use. And if you were to imagine a ladder, we have the lowest emotion, so the lowest resonance of emotion or emotional frequency. And that, around there is loneliness, despair, isolation, depression, worthlessness. And then as we move up the scale through the middle range and then the upper range, we move up to into the higher and higher frequencies, such as joy, trust, thrill, and love. And how I like to look at this is like a musical scale almost, or like a piano. So when, let's say with a piano, a pianist is very skilled, they can play music and they're moving up and down the keys, they're using all the whites, they're using the blacks, they're not getting stuck in only certain chords or certain notes. They're not only limited to the upper register or the upper range, which is often how we're taught we need to be with our emotions. So as humans, we come with all these frequencies of emotions, kind of like a piano comes with all these keys, and then we're often taught, now only these keys or only these emotions are okay. Try only to feel happy always. And that becomes extremely limiting. And as humans and, changing environments and changing relationships and all sorts of things, if we're living wholeheartedly, we will have access to all those emotions, and yet we try to limit ourselves to only a few. And this causes extreme disruption within our system. So with the example of the piano, for instance, a pianist who's very skilled can use all the notes, they can flow, and they can pretty much manage the notes. They can play different songs, they can go down here for a while, and then they can come up here for a while, and it's just a beautiful symphony. And so when it comes to emotions, you might be wondering, well, okay, that sounds nice, but how does it apply to emotions? Because I don't like feeling down or angry or jealous or lonely or depressed or enraged. I don't like those. However, when we deny the experience of those, then we start to limit ourselves. Now we can only go in certain places in life. And so what happens is we create triggers. So we're trying not to ever experience this, maybe because we haven't been taught how to be with them, or we don't trust ourselves with them, or we've taught they're dangerous or bad. So we limit ourselves, and then that creates issues in its own way. So when we can be with them and we trust that we can sit with that energy, we can sit with the anger, we can sit with the loneliness, and we be with it so that it can shift and move, then we start to become very skilled. We start to become more like the pianist, and the emotions flow, nothing gets stuck, and we can move through them very quickly. Not only that, but every emotion has a wisdom. Every emotion has its own wisdom. It carries a function. There's not just the energy, but there's like a guidance. There's something to learn there. And so that's what this series is going to be about, is the wisdom of emotions. And on a regular basis, I'll be sharing an email. If you're on my mailing list, you'll receive an email that helps you to understand the function and the need of each emotion. And I want to be really specific here. Often we make our emotions sort of our guiding star, perhaps, in terms of, if I feel good, it is good. If the emotion is good and it makes me feel good, therefore it's good. So, love, happiness, and joy are good because I feel good. And loneliness, anger, depression, jealousy are bad because I feel bad when I'm there. And again, this is misleading. So just recall that pain is an alert. It's almost like our warning system. It's alerting us to something that's really important. Pain is like that signal that says, pay attention here. There's something for you to know. It's like the dashboard light, right, on our vehicles. And so when we aren't able to be with those emotions, it's almost like taking a piece of duct tape and just taping over top of that engine light and continuing to drive, trying to pretend that there is no problem and that nothing's going on. And that's often, alerts, that's often what's happening when we cannot be with certain emotions. So of course, if you're a car owner, you'll know, you probably had the experience, the dash light goes on, and unless you're a mechanic yourself and can figure it out, yeah, it needs to go to the shop. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be addressed. And the quicker you do that and the more skilled the technician is, the faster you can get back on the road, driving happily and safely. Same with these emotions. So they are here to warn us of something. And if we can pay attention and learn what we need to learn and process them masterfully, then they can shift really quickly. The other thing that I'd like to make a point about is that pain is very different than suffering. And so for you women out there who are mothers, if you've always wanted to be a mother and you were just so excited to learn that you were pregnant and you were going to build a family, you'll know that pregnancy maybe wasn't the most amazing. Sometimes there was painful times. Sometimes there's like those beautiful pregnancies where I just hear women say how much they love being pregnant, and then others really have a tough time. And then when it comes to the birthing, I hear, because I'm not a mother myself, that's not so easy. Yes, there's, every birth story is different, but usually pain is involved. But if there was, a dream of growing a family and having children, there's pain, but there's not suffering. There's pain, but there's joy. And so here it's like there's pain, but it doesn't make it bad. And so when we are making our emotions good or bad based on how they feel, again, we're being misguided. So emotions may feel bad, but it doesn't make them bad. And that's something that I'd also like to share. And when we can release the judgment of the good or bad or positive or negative on these emotions, then we're not so afraid of them and we can be with them and they can flow through. So let me see, I just made some notes. I want to make sure that I'm addressing everything that I wanted to share. And I think, okay, I'm going to say one more thing. So in terms of frequency, just to share this a little bit more, the frequency of emotions, the lowest frequency of emotion we've all experienced: powerlessness, despair, loneliness, worthlessness, depression, those are extremely low, what we call low frequency emotions. And love, joy, thrill, passion, enthusiasm are very high frequency emotions. And you can think of frequency in terms of energy. So what might make sense is when you have experienced those really low lows, and grief is not necessarily an emotion, it's a blend. There's many emotions that go into the experience of grief, and you know, you might relate to grief being a bit of a washing machine or a roller coaster. You're up and you're down and you're sideways, and every moment could be different. So grief carries a lot of different emotions, but if we stick with just the low emotions of the depression, the despair, the hopelessness, worthlessness, loneliness, you may relate to not having a lot of energy, right? Just getting out of bed in the morning, getting yourself showered, getting yourself dressed could take, you know, all the energy you have. Getting yourself fed and out the door, you know, it's just everything feels harder because the energy, the frequency here is very low. Whereas when we're in a state of thrill, enthusiasm, passion, love, joy, trust, hope, you know, those are very high frequency emotions. And what's not possible there? You know, when we're in that space, it's like we are on top of the world. We've got the world by its tail. We're capable of almost anything. You know, so things feel easier. We can take on hard things, and they don't cause as much stress, or they don't take as much energy to do. So I hope that this has been helpful. I hope that this is maybe starting to get you thinking a little bit differently about emotions. If there's any action steps that I would love for you to take on after watching this, is to just notice how you think of emotions and where you might use the language around making emotions good or bad, negative or positive, and wherever you can find either mentally the judgment, or if you're languaging it, to see if you can kind of back up a little bit and remove it, and just see if you can kind of release that and think of it more in terms of frequency, and perhaps even the, you know, checking in with the wisdom that might be there. So again, I will be sharing this in my newsletter series. If you are on my mailing list, you will be receiving them. If you're not, then, and you would like to be, then please join. I would love to have you. And until I see you next time, I hope this was helpful. Have a wonderful day.